This is part 4 of our video series on using basic wood turning tools. I'm Jason with Geiserwoodturner, and today we're going to be using a skew chisel to set the basic shape on our foot massager that we're working on. Another traditional turning tool is called a skew chisel, and the reason it's called a skew is because it's not square on the end. It's got a high point and a low point, and that makes it skewed to one side. And this tool is ground to a point, and if you can see here, it's got a bevel on one side and a bevel on the other side. And the cut we're going to make, we're going to cut riding the bevel on one side. Now this is called the heel of the skew, and this is the toe of the skew. Before we get started, I want to make sure that our foot massager is perfectly symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is mark the center, and I'm using my center finding ruler, and I'll kind of place it in the middle and mark the center here. And then a cool trick you can do on the lathe is you can turn it on and rub your pencil on the lathe, and it's going to make a mark all the way down the center. Today we're going to be making a planing cut with our skew chisel. So we're going to raise the tool rest up. We're going to be above the center line just a little bit. That helps us to ride that bevel right on top of the piece of wood. So there's our bevel, and we'll place that on the tool rest and then right on the piece of wood. And you can see where we're about 1/3 of the way from the heel, and that's where our cut's going to end up. We want to keep the toe out of the wood, because if that catches in there, that could be pretty dramatic. So that's all you have to watch out for, is to keep the toe out of it. And if you have any problems, just drop that handle like we have before, and it'll eliminate your cut. For this cut, we're going to make it high in the middle and go down to our depth that's set on the outside. And I don't want to start in the middle. I want to be able to start at the outside and take off little bits at a time, like we talked about before. We don't want to take it all in one bite. With the lathe going, we're going to start our cut. We'll anchor on the tool rest, bring the bevel up to the wood, and then raise and start our cut. And keeping in mind that we're going to try and keep that cut about 1/3 of the way from the heel. A lot of people are really intimidated by their skew chisel. You can have some pretty dramatic catches. So I think if you learn cuts one at a time and practice them, you'll do a lot better off towards learning the skew chisel and how to use it. The great thing about making this cut is you can just watch the wood peel away. I love this cut because it makes the wood so smooth. You may not even have to sand after you're done with this. Another helpful tip while you're doing this is don't watch where you're actually cutting the wood, but put your eyes on the top profile of the wood, and then you're going to see where your cut is actually shaping the wood. And it's really helpful when you're doing any shaping on the lathe. With one side down to our depth, all we need to do is go to the other side. I find it helpful to practice switching hands or becoming ambidextrous. That way you can make a variety of cuts and do them with the opposite hand, and it can be a little bit more comfortable that way. But you don't have to do that. Once you get the other side down to depth, just kind of look over it and feel over the whole thing and make sure that you've got the shape refined to the way that you want it to look. This has been part 4 in our series using beginning wood turning tools. We used a skew chisel to make the basic shape of our foot massager. Next time we're going to use a spindle gouge to do all the fun parts that make this thing work.